Welcome to the Minds of E-commerce podcast, where you learn one key strategy that made leading e-commerce companies grow exponentially. We cut the bullshit and keep the meat. In a 15-minute episode, founders and executives take us through a deep dive of a strategy so you get to learn and grow your online sales. In the last episode, you heard from Gareth Everard of Keto and Rockwell Razors, who shared with us how he calculates and utilizes the lifetime value of his customers to profitably scale his e-commerce brands. Today, on episode number 7, get ready. Phil Kyprianou, founder of GothRider, will share how he's been using quizzes as a traffic acquisition and conversion strategy that has been adding millions of dollars to his company's bottom line. I'm your host, Raphael Paulin-Daigle, and I'm the founder of SplitBase, a conversion optimization agency for lifestyle and fashion e-commerce brands. This is Minds of E-commerce. All right, Phil, so welcome to the show. Thanks so much for accepting the invite. So as you know, on this Minds of E-commerce podcast, it's all about diving straight into your business and really dissecting one key strategy so our listeners can get the most value out of it right away and they can learn from it. So to get some context, tell us a bit more. When did you launch GothRider?
So I launched GothRider in 2015. Basically, it almost came by accident because I was already selling t-shirts online for a while, drop shipping stuff from China and things like that. And at a certain point, I was selling biker jewelry randomly. I mean, I didn't have any intention of going into that niche or anything like that. So selling rings, selling necklaces. And one day I found out a product that was selling very good. And I said, okay, that's crazy. I mean, there's something happening right there. And then later on, I tested another thing until I found a watch. And I mean, that watch just went like crazy. I mean, I sold around like 4,000 watches in 6 weeks. I said, okay, now it's time to move everything from my general store and have this on a separate store where everything goes together. You know what? So I could have like rings about skulls, things that, I mean, was related, much more related to bikers or people that love, badass stuff. And there was no idea of building a brand or nothing at all around. It was just like putting things together. Then figure out, the store was continuing growing consistently. And I said, I might try to start building something more branded. I added like more branded t-shirt with the logo and things like that. Got a very good traction there. And I said, you know what, now it's much more the time to focus on that. I was still having other store, always testing new thing on the background, but I was getting to it, like the brand got me into it much more than it was part of my plan. I mean, I didn't have any plan at that time. And the plan really came later. And I used like multiple different strategies basically to acquire customers. I mean, for sure, there was all the basics traffic thing, like free plus shipping. So I could, sell things for super cheap and only make people pay for shipping. Then after that, I was looking always for some sort of way of attracting people in a very cheap or hacking way to get people fast as I can so I can put them in the funnel, upselling them and all this kind of stuff. And that went super good, for a while, because at that time, the whole e-commerce industry was not very competitive, especially in that niche. We were like very few people hammering on these people, on these customers, pushing them stuff and all this kind of thing. So there was no competition, and a lot of people, couldn't source the way that we were doing at the price we were doing. So we were staying, almost on the radar. And probably like at the end of 2016, things started to change. Facebook started to increase their pricing. We're not getting the same margin. Like you got like a bunch of people started to enter in this space, drop shipping space and things like that. And 2017, where things started to work, because the ring that I was getting, everybody could get it, Right. So they were selling that probably, $15 when I was selling that, $60. So the perceived value and the whole thing behind it didn't make sense anymore, so why people would buy from me when they can have for cheaper and all this kind of thing. So it's really where I started. You know what, I put a lot of efforts in that. I don't want to put it away. We paid for trademark also at this time. So we had like 80 countries that the brand name is trademarked. So I decided like to do a twist on the brand, so it took me like probably like 2 years, because right now we're really into the full stage of rebranding stuff to make the plan work basically. And we went through a couple, of stuff, because we had to test, our supply chain or logistics. Are we going to continue to do business in China? And that was like a very big decision for us, because the main problem was, again, getting copied very fast. So you can get like the mold copy very fast on anything you can get. And finally you find your stuff on Alibaba and AliExpress. Right. That's one thing we didn't want to do. And then after that, it's all the qualities, the quality, the insurance of quality that your product will get to the people in a fashionable manner, and everything that goes around also. So that was also a very big decision for us.
And now you're really building, it's more than just an e-commerce store. You're really building it into a brand.
Exactly.
With values. It's not just, like how it started. Now it's really building into something much bigger.
Exactly.
It's only been a few years too. And you've also achieved that really quickly. If we look also at comparables of other brands who's done that.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the reason why is seeing the evolution on how e-commerce is turning out, how social media is turning out. So that helped us a lot. And also getting we got like a couple, I'm going to tell the truth here. I mean, all the customer we had like just before the rebranding was totally shit. Okay. Because they were cheap people, basically. It's not because they were bad people. It's like they didn't want to pay more. I mean, these kind of customers, they like for really stuff that are accessible. They want fast fashion. They are not willing to pay, and that's basically not the type of customers that we are looking right now. We're looking for people that have much more appreciation, that will take care of the jewelry, that is part of them, that is part of an emotional part of them. And that's one thing we're building now with the brand is each ring we want to give like this personal aspect. So we built the one that is called the Jesus called Memento Mori, and it's all about death, and it's a big topic, but it's all about remembering the people. You're buying that piece of jewelry to remember the people that were part of your life, and you want to keep it for you, you wanted to keep them with you. So it's much more in this type of connection that we're building stuff now than just random stuff that, people can buy and don't have any feeling about it,
So that, I think that is already an incredible takeaway here. You started as an e-commerce store, not a brand, it was an e-commerce store, and your customers were just, people who didn't really care. They were price shoppers. They were not shoppers that were necessarily looking for something that meant anything to them. They would not be loyal to you either, right? If they found something cheaper on another website that looks similar, they would probably buy it. And who cares about GothRider, right? Whereas now what you've done is you've put more effort into actually attracting your ideal customer. And I'm guessing at the same time, you've been increasing the lifetime value of those customers. Like the revenues are going up as well, because you're really focusing on the brand and the emotional aspects, and you're really taking time to focus on the products, on how it's described. And what it seems like is that you're really listening to your audience as well. Instead of looking at what products you can sell, you're listening to what your audience like, and then turning that into products that can be sold. So I think that is super, super smart. So I just want to, just to give it a little bit more context to people, I've been following you for a few years now, I think, and you've grown GothRider pretty fast. Can you give us some like juicy stats of, some of the success, some of the growth you've had through the strategies you've employed? Because you definitely have really cool tricks, and a lot in e-commerce. You run a Facebook group for Shopify, Soranos as well. What are some of the juicy metrics that you can share? And then we'll dive into one strategy that was really key for you.
Yeah, so basically one thing we changed in terms of our mindset is basically we try to remove any vanity metrics. That's one thing, because we found out that getting high conversion rate didn't mean anything if people were not coming back to our site, or if the lifetime value was not there and things like that. So one thing we're looking much more is want to have a good average order value that is profitable. That's one thing that is very important for us, because the cost of goods on our thing are quite high compared to things made in China, because we made everything in Canada, in Montreal, basically. So the cost of labor and things like that is totally not the same. And our margin compared to even like bigger, like known brands are kept relatively okay. We don't do like 1,000% margin on selling diamonds like Tiffany's does. We're not there at all. We try to keep it as affordable, but also to make the how can I say that, the value real there. So that's one thing that is very important for that. The other thing also is, like you said, is we have a tight relationship with people. So for us, the other thing is the frequency. Frequency is very important in terms of how many times these people will buy with us and for how long they will buy with us. One time is great, but if I can get them 2-3 times with other stuff, this is where I'm going to be super happy, because it's not about buying, it's about the relation that I'm creating. Like I like to treat my customers almost like friends, so how many times I will be able to see them during a year. That's basically the whole idea there.
I love it. So it was really like a shift of focus of, hey, instead of looking at the metrics that may not matter that much for a business, let's optimize for the metrics that will really drive us to long-term success. And like you said, customer lifetime value, frequency and recency of purchase, those numbers.
Exactly. So it's really almost like one customer at a time. And since also we offer 100% customized jewelry, so we have to do a lot of back and forth with them on some of our piece, So it's very important that the connection, and we have this very similar idea, similar atmosphere as well. Right. Similar world is very, very important. If not, we're just not a good fit. We try to work with a good fit. So that's one part of it. Now, if we're going, like you were saying, in the more juicy stuff, we now, the real goal is not to go after super broad audience. We used to do a lot of quizzes and things like that. We're still doing it, but in a very different way to get much more precise type of audience, than it was before, just getting everywhere, putting that in a big basket and see, which one will fit the best. Now it's much more who are going to fit the best first, then how we can get them into a world so they love or they connect with the products that we're doing. So,
and you've achieved that using quizzes.
Yeah, we have achieved that using quizzes. And also in the whole sequence after, it's much more about the experience getting. So we get like a bunch of people up front, then we're trying to get more into conversational, let's say, content. One thing that we're going to focus a lot in the upcoming months and year is video. So we want to create much more, not everything about product, because that's another thing we want to get away from. Is most of the brands, sometimes they focus too much on the products, on the quality. They will say, oh, this is a beautiful ring. It's 18 karat gold. It's made with this and that. I don't care about that. People really don't care about that. Like I was saying at first, is the emotional states that you want to bring them, or what's the world or the universe you're around them. So we are going to launch GothRider TV. So GothRider TV would be about what is the world we are gravitating around. We are all about people that love, badass stuff. So could be people that do skateboard, figures, BMX, extreme sports, or tattoo artists, that loves that kind of thing. People that are doing, anything that seems to be extreme badass.
It's really to reach all their interests and their emotions so they can relate with the brand.
Exactly. And and also the thing we found out is, if you're too narrow about one thing, that's going to be also a problem about scaling also your thing. So you need to find again, emotion is easier to scale than a niche, a specific niche. So if we're able to connect the emotion and the badass emotion, let's say, or like I was saying earlier, like death emotion or your loved one emotion, but that is part of your universe, it's going to be easier for us to scale from there. So all the rest, the strategies are much more based on the content. So from articles, like I said, video for us is going to be a very big thing. Podcast, probably that's one thing I would like to bring more. But again, with people that have experienced or experimented something that is, again, part of this whole atmosphere, whole world. Exactly.
That's awesome. So I know, Phil, you've also, you mentioned quizzes a bit mentioned it quickly, and I really want to dive into that.
For sure.
You know, so we have about, I would say, a good 8 minutes to dive as deep as we can go.
Let's do it.
That world of quizzes. So I know you've grown it. You know, you've grown the company using quizzes. I've heard you talk about quizzes. Just to give context to the audience and tell them why it matters, can you give us an idea of how it performs compared to a lot of the other techniques and why you've gone with the quizzes? Because obviously, you know, there's a business advantage to it, and I'm sure you've seen maybe a lower cost per acquisition. Tell us more about that.
So the whole idea was, so basically, to give you context, I've been doing lead generation for probably more than 10 years, you know, so from insurance companies, mortgage companies, and things like that. And at the end, what we found out is not about the type of leads, is where you get them. What is the behavior of the platform you're using to gather these people? And by doing a lot of tests and errors, we found out, like, you know, platforms like Facebook will have different behaviors than Google AdWords, than Pinterest, than Instagram, and things like that, you know. And Facebook is probably one of the best examples, because if you remember back then in 2007, when it came, let's say, public, it was not only a university, they made a partnership with Zynga. The whole idea there was to keep people inside the platform as much as possible inside Facebook. And with that, they did games. And the old behaviors of Facebook was based on part of games, but also the behaviors was, okay, I'm going there to see what my friends are doing, what they're looking, and things like that. You know, they're not on Facebook to buy stuff. I mean, that's not the whole idea. It's not a marketplace. It's not a shopping place. It's nothing like that. So the first touch point for us was important to match it with their best behaviors.
Interesting.
And by doing that, we found out that games, and we did contests also. I will tell you, we did contests, and contest works, but quizzes worked better. And just because there are no friction at all, you're getting there to play. On contest, there's always like this back idea of, oh, they're going to get my name and doing this kind of thing with me and blah, blah, blah. And it's not sure. Sometimes it's scammy and things like that. But with quizzes, there's nothing. You know, you're just playing. You're getting the result. In exchange, you put your email and thank you very much. And it's as, how can I say that? It's tricky. It's some sort of tricky without giving like this scammy idea that there will be something going in the background.
Right.
So that's really how we do it. Now, how we tailor quiz, it's very important, because you don't want to get like too cheap, too fast, and things like that. So all our quiz have a minimum of 8 steps, you know, 8 questions inside, because we want to take them as long to qualify them. So I would say anything above 8 steps will always be better, because only the best at the end, or only the one that you want to gather will complete these quiz. Now, if they didn't complete, we always try to run a retargeting strategy around that. Okay. But we found out that even doing the retargeting strategy, if they don't complete one time, and if they complete the second time, they will not necessarily be your best bet, because they were not in this mindset, you know. And the cost of leads will even be more expensive, something that is strange for retargeting, because normally you think, oh, they've seen one time, they're going to play, it's going to cost you less. No, it didn't work like that with quizzes.
Interesting. So what you're saying is that quizzes really get people into the engagement mindset. So obviously, you know, they get to the website and they have an easier time engaging with their content, and then you transition them into a sales funnel, you know, that way. Now, you're saying about 8 questions. What happens after those 8 questions? What type of result page do they get? Do you show them products? Do you show them? Tell us more about that.
So once they complete like the first 8 questions, we ask them for their email to get the answer. So once they enter the email, they get the answer, and after that, we're showing them an offer. Most of the time, the offer we want. And first of all, why we want to get the offer? Because we want to get transactional right away with them. And if we're not getting transactional, it's okay. It's going to be probably later or probably never. But what we've seen is people that are getting transactional right away is the one that we can start selling right after other offers and getting them into this kind of buying circle, you know?
Got it. I just want to make sure before we keep going. So you're saying, so when they get into that result page, I almost forgot what I wanted to say, but you're going to the result page, and generally what type of questions do they answer before they get there? What are they expecting?
So they in terms of questions, so basically we had one of our most popular quiz. It was like, what kind of famous biker are you, let's say. So they had like multiple choice from which one they could, at the end, if they answer like that, and that question, they would end up, you know, being like that type of biker.
Got it. And then how do you transition your products into that result page?
So basically it's on the same page. On the same page, we were showing this is a one-time offer. You can get this for, you know, let's say 50% off today with some scarcity and things like that, you know, and at the bottom you get the answer. So at the time they're seeing like this big image with the offer, but they are seeing also the answer to their question. And it's almost like a promoted page, you know. It's like you get that, you get the banner, and if you click, you click. If not, you're not. But one thing we found out is getting the offer at the top of the answer was better converting, because people were seeing that first, and depending on the size of the screen, sometimes it was taking much more space. So, and then after they were seeing, oh, here's the answer and the description, a long description of the answer, but they had to scroll down, but they would have seen the offer before. And that was what was driving the most out right away.
Interesting. By the way, so before I kind of recap those, what tools are you using for that? Do you have any specific tools that you use for strategy?
So basically, there's 2 tools that I really love when it's time to quiz. There's one called Lit Quizzes. It's one of the, I would say that in 60% or more case scenario, I will use them. And there's another one that is called Try Interact. And it's just because there's like sometimes some stuff you cannot do in lead quizzes and basically Try Interact offers. So I bounce between one or the other depending on what I need to do. There's like, you can even now, you know, go much more further, do like some personalization inside the quizzes. You can do like logic branch and things like that. So you can get much more deeper. Just don't get too complicated when you start it at first. I mean, you keep that simple. I think that's the easiest way. And as you get more used to it, you can add an extra layer each time. And you will see that if you're getting much more specific with time and you know much more your audience, is where you're going to find like that kind of golden nuggets inside.
That's awesome, Phil. Oh my God. Thank you so much for sharing. You know, if we look at this interview, you know, I'm thinking there are so many golden nuggets. So first of all, one of your first strategy is to turn your e-commerce store into a real brand, right? So you're really listening to your customers and building a brand around their likings, around their interests. You're doing that with a channel, right? Like a video content. Then you're looking, and also in your product development. Then you're also looking at, in terms of growth, to measure your growth, you're narrowing down your metrics and really focusing on the metrics that will drive you to long-term success. You want your customers to come back and not just one-time buyers like, you know, the dropshipping world is used to seeing. So by pivoting your brand to a real brand, now you're focusing on getting your customers to come back through frequency, recency, and lifetime value. And one of your main engine for growth has been quizzes. So you're saying 8 questions, what type of biker are you, at least for your brand, right? That is very relevant to your audience. People answer a bunch of questions. They get to a result page where, they get their result, but they also get products that are related, and you tie in your offer with the result. And that generally gets you much cheaper cost of acquisition. And it seems like it's worked really well for you as well. So much value. And now, of course, I think one of the key aspects, and I want to repeat this because I fell into that trap myself, when I was building automations and things like that. We want to start very fancy and very complicated with hardcore personalization, hardcore, very tailored quizzes. But at the end of the day, it's sometimes best to just keep it simple and then optimize as we go.
Exactly. And you will learn as well from the data that you will receive at first. Then it's what will brings you to do the tweaks that needs to get to the next step,
All right. Thank you so much, Phil. That's all the time we have. And thanks for coming on the show. All right. That's it for today's episode. And in the next episode, you'll hear from Jack Haldrup, founder and CEO of Dr. Squatch. And you'll learn how they managed to get over 40 million views for one of their viral videos, and how they get over 100,000 orders a year with a brand personality that convert customers through relatability and humor. To make sure you don't miss any of the new episodes, subscribe to the podcast. And if you've liked what you've heard, make sure to leave a review in the iTunes store. That would truly mean the world to me. Now, if you're working on an e-commerce store that does over $1 million in online sales and increasing conversions is currently a priority, make sure to go to splitbase.com/assessment. That's splitbase.com/assessment to get a free analysis of your website and find out what's the #1 action item our conversion experts recommend that you do next to boost your website conversions. If you have any guest requests, questions, or comments, tweet me at @Paulin-Daigle and I'll be happy to hear from you. Thanks again for listening. This is Minds of E-Commerce.